and welcome to this special edition of the Riyal Deal, coming to you from the Arabiya News headquarters. Now, today, the International Monetary Fund has published an economic outlook report which highlights the challenges faced by the Middle East, North Africa, Caucasus and Central Asia regions. These challenges include trade tensions, conflict, climate shocks and political instability. Well, entitled Charting a Path Through the Haze, the report also offers policy recommendations as to how countries should navigate the potentially choppy waters. Well, to talk us through that report and its findings, we're joined by Dr. Jihad Azour, the Director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department at the International Monetary Fund. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Dr. Azour. You also served as Lebanon's finance minister during the years 2005 to 2008. So we'll certainly be talking to you about Lebanon. But I wanted to start by talking about Saudi Arabia. This program is, of course, dedicated to the Saudi economy. Real GDP growth in Saudi Arabia projected to rise steadily throughout the course of 2026 as well. What's behind the growth?
Well, what is behind the growth? First is the performance of the non-oil sector. Over the last few years, the diversification strategy in Saudi, with the development of certain number of reforms, has led to steady, stable growth in the non-oil sector. In 2021-22, Saudi was the highest growing economy in the G20, thanks to the effort of diversification. In 2025 and 26, the increase in oil production, because of the latest agreement of the OPEC Plus, will also grow the oil sector. Of course, this acceleration of production will be less than what was expected in December. This is why we had to revise downward our projections for this year and next because of this decision.
So Saudi's efforts to diversify and boost non-oil growth, I mean, how do you rate the performance overall?
Well, over the last few years, certain number of reforms have helped Saudi not only to grow the economy, but also to reduce unemployment. Unemployment is at the lowest level in decades, especially at the youth level. Women's participation in the economy increased from 14 to 34% in 5 years. And this is despite the various shocks, COVID, the inflation shock, the uncertainty that we are living through. Therefore, Saudi economy is vibrant, dynamic, and reforms have been very much impacting positively the outcome of the economy. Of course, the oil sector is still an important component of the economy, but the development of the non-oil sector, the development of certain number of new activities are helping the economy to diversify not only the GDP, but also the state revenues.
And what sort of a rate would you think we might see personal income tax?
I think those are issues that will be part of the fiscal strategy, both in terms of rates, tranches and timing.
Obviously, we've seen Saudi Arabia's economy affected by the extension of the OPEC Plus voluntary oil production cuts. How's that affected oil-related growth?
Well, the OPEC Plus agreement in the past few years led to additional voluntary cuts in production and in export. And Saudi was the largest contributor. Recently, in December, the agreement of this group is to gradually increase export, which in itself will increase the GDP of Saudi. Yet the softening of oil price since the last few weeks will reduce this expansion. Yet this will contribute to the recovery of the oil sector and the recovery of the overall Saudi economy in 2025. What does it mean? It means that revenues will grow and also external resources will increase.
Are we seeing increased private consumption and investment in the kingdom, would you say?
Yes, we see an economy that is becoming more growing because of local demand, and demand is consumption as well as also investment. Saudi is running one of the largest investment program in the region, but also consumption is growing in certain number of activities, including certain service sectors like tourism, hospitalities, and others, which is why the economy is growing at steady state.
And inflation looking pretty stable?
Inflation is pretty stable. I would say this is the case in most of the GCC economies. And part of it is due to the fact that there are still certain level of subsidies that are helping to reduce the volatility of oil, of prices in the economy.
One of the things the report points to is the substantial, it says, foreign direct investment that Saudi Arabia has attracted. How has Saudi Arabia done that? How has it attracted that investment?
Well, Saudi is the largest economy in the region and has embarked in a large investment program. Some of this program is to increase the capacity of the economy to produce. Some of it also is to develop certain number of new sectors. This is why Saudi is an economy that is growing at a healthy rate, economy that is large, the only economy that is part of the G20. And recently with the Vision 2030, we saw a certain number of sectors, activities that are now being growing in the economy, which attracted FDIs.
Such as?
Well, you have in several sectors, technology is one, renewable is another one. You have a massive investment in hospitality, cultural, as well as also touristic activities. All these activities led to increase in investment from abroad.
The report focuses quite considerably on global uncertainty, which is a reality for the entire planet, as those words suggest. Of all the countries in the region, though, how robust would you say Saudi Arabia is looking in the context of that uncertainty?
Well, the uncertainty is affecting all countries in the world. And in fact, uncertainty usually has a negative impact on growth. This is why we revised downward our growth projections. Yet, compared to other parts of the world, the region is still growing in 2025. 2026, in the case of Saudi, we project growth at 3% this year and 3.7% in 2026. This is compared to other comparable countries in the G20, it's a good performance. Yet, uncertainty has negative impact on growth. On average, it could reduce growth by 2.5%. And in this outlook this year, we are studying the impact in the medium term. And if uncertainty stays for a longer period, for example, for 2 years, it could have a negative impact on growth of 4.5%. This is why we recommend countries to be very vigilant, increase buffers in order to reduce any negative impact on the stability of the economy, and also accelerate transformation by investing in the future, developing productivity, and reduce any risk for being subjected to external shocks.
And the word uncertainty, just to sort of dig a little bit deeper on that word, what are you getting at? You're basically talking about tariffs, aren't you? Is there anything else?
No, uncertainty is every or anything that could negatively affect your economy that you cannot measure. This is the difference between risk and uncertainty. Risk is something that you can assess, you can measure, and you can mitigate. Uncertainty, you know that things may not go in the right direction, but it's very difficult for you to quantify, assess, and find the right measures to mitigate it.
Okay. And when you look at the sort of the geopolitical situation across the whole region,
yes,
doesn't it make Saudi Arabia's ongoing efforts to diversify away from oil dependence, doesn't make that look all the more prudent by way of a path forward?
Of course. On one hand, this will allow the Saudi economy to be less dependent on the volatility of oil price. And we are seeing now a softening of the oil price. But also, the Saudi economy is becoming much more complex, i.e. much more sophisticated. And this will allow the economy to be more competitive. Of course, Saudi is the largest economy in the region, but it is getting now more and more connected globally. We see this with the increase in FDI, for example. We see this in the development of certain fast-growing sectors around technology, AI, renewable energies, and things of the like that put Saudi now more into being competitive with advanced economies.
Okay, and perhaps that explains briefly why you've decided to establish your regional office in Riyadh?
Well, of course, Saudi, in addition to their size of the economy, it's a very active country globally. The chair of the IMFC, which is the body that overlooks the work of the fund, is the Saudi Minister of Finance. And Saudi is becoming one of the magnets that is attracting not only investment, but also policymakers to discuss economic financial issues. Recently, in February, we had an international conference in Alola, in this beautiful site, whereby we gathered leading ministers, governors of central bank from emerging economies with high-level scholars to discuss the global challenges and to increase coordination between emerging market decision makers. This is the recognition of the regional and international role that Saudi is playing now.
Just looking broadly at the report and perhaps moving our focus to all the countries that are covered by it, the word tariffs appears, I think, in sentence one. I can't remember. It was certainly in the first paragraph. Obviously, that brings some uncertainty and potentially makes the region vulnerable in the face of prolonged global tensions and trade tensions. But it also suggests there could be some opportunities. What's the opportunity?
Well, let's start with the risks. Although the region is not directly affected by the tariff measures because of the limited integration between trade with the US and also the exclusion of the energy sector, the oil and gas sector, yet it has an indirect effect on financial market stability, on capital flow, and also on the oil price. The drop in demand globally will affect the oil market. Therefore, it's very important to be vigilant and address risks that could grow over time. Second, uncertainty, if it's not addressed, it will have even a deeper negative impact on growth. This is why we urge countries and decision makers to address those risks. How to address it? By building buffers, increasing policy coordination, transforming or accelerating the transformation of their economies. Yet, and this is rightly said, it could be a source of opportunities. We see a massive transformation of geopolitical and geo-economic relations in the world. We see also opportunities for emerging powers like, case in point, Saudi, but others, playing a bigger role as connectors. And also we see different patterns of trade. And this is why increasing cooperation with regions in different geographies in Africa, in Asia, in the ASEAN countries is a source of opportunities. And we encourage countries to do so. For them to succeed, they need to have the right economic platforms, economy that is competitive, productive, economy where the private sector has a leading role, and also economies that are forward-looking, investing in sectors that are sectors of the future.
I want to ask you about Lebanon, as I said I would at the beginning. Some major efforts underway in Lebanon with a new government. The country seems to have really turned the page on quite a lot of its past complicated chapters, shall we say. Are you confident that the country is going to return now to a period of economic stability and that in turn is going to lead to a period of economic growth?
Lebanon is, as you rightly said, emerging from a deep crisis, a crisis of finance, a crisis due to the impact of the war, but also crisis of confidence. Therefore, it's very important for Lebanon and the Lebanese authorities to regain confidence of their citizens by addressing those deeply rooted problems that they have been delayed for years now, which means that you need to address the issue of the debt, the issue of the financial sector, the issue of the deposits, bring inflation down because it's a big tax on low-income people, and also to have a roadmap on how to recover the Lebanese economy. This requires certain number of important reforms, but also the assistance and the support to allow Lebanon to address those. Lebanon also needs to recover from the war, reconstruct, and this would require massive aid from partner countries. What is the role of the fund? The fund has been partnered with Lebanon since the beginning in 2022. We reached an agreement with with Lebanon that was not put in place. Now we are actively discussing with the authorities based on their request to negotiate new program. 2 missions were sent to Lebanon in the last few weeks, and last week at the spring meetings at the fund, we had an opportunity to discuss with the authorities about their plan, about their strategy, and what are the needed reforms. They have introduced the one step, which is a new law to address the issue of bank secrecy. It's a step in the right direction. There are others that are needed for the Lebanese economy to recover.
And just moving lastly on to Syria's neighbour, Lebanon's neighbour Syria, one of the worst affected countries in the region. Your report points to a 60% contraction in the economy since 2011 when the unrest began. How does the IMF steer Syria back to recovery and growth? And I should point out that Saudi Arabia and Qatar have said that they're going to help settle some of Syria's debt. How are you going to support them?
Well, Syria has a massive need to stabilize the economy, rebuild it, address some of the issues that are extremely vulnerable or creating extreme vulnerability in Syria. You have the highest number of refugees in the world. You have an infrastructure that has been massively damaged and destroyed. Therefore, you need to establish stability, security, economic and social stability. You need to rebuild institutions. You need to have a well-functioning central bank, well-functioning Ministry of Finance. You need to address the debt and the arrears that Syria has, and you need to bring Syria back into the international system by working with Syria to remove sanctions, get their regular, I would say, interaction at the regional and international level. Last week, during the spring meetings, we had a roundtable discussion on Syria with all the stakeholders, regional institutions, partner countries, international organizations, to see how we could assist Syria. And it's a long journey that will take time in order for Syria to stabilize and also to start recovering.
Okay, and just lastly, I mean, very briefly, if you will, I mean, what's your overall feeling for the region? Is it one of optimism amidst the uncertainty and some of the turmoil and some of the tragedy, or would you say that your outlook for the Middle East and the regions covered by your report would be perhaps more cautious?
Well, the region is resilient and has been able to withstand shocks and uncertainties. Yet, it was at a high cost, the cost of high unemployment, especially at the youth level, and slow growth for a certain number of countries. Therefore, what the region needs is to keep modernizing itself, accelerate reforms, be more productive, give more opportunities to the private sector, especially small and medium-sized companies, get more integrated among countries in the region, but also increase the linkages with different geographies. Of course, there are bright spots, but also there are laggards. And there are countries in distress like Sudan, like Yemen, who need special assistance. It's a complex region, but it's a region that now geopolitically has an opportunity to play a bigger role. And this is what we at the fund want to help this region achieve.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us.
Me.
Dr. Jihad Azour, Director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department of the International Monetary Fund. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you to you for watching. Do stay tuned.